Good evening, everyone. Welcome back. In the previous class, we understood what is a software application, how many layers will be available in the application. So software application contains mainly three layers. One is front end, second one is back end, third one is database. Front end contains user interface. Clients will communicate with our applications by using front end. When they perform some operation on the front end will communicate with the back end of the application. Back end contains business logic. That business logic will communicate with the database. Database is used to store the data. Let's take a simple example. We developed the front end of the project by using Angular. Back end developed by using Java. Database is MySQL. So front end application, back end application, database is available. In order to run this project in the real time, we need to set up all the softwares in the machine. For example, we need to install the Angular, we need to install Java, we need to install Tomcat, we need to install MySQL. If you install all these softwares in the machine, then only we can run our application code. Coding will be done by development team. As a DevOps engineer, we need to prepare the environment to run our application. So here, running the application in one system, that's fine. We can install all the required softwares in that machine and we can run the application. But here, in the real time, our application will be executed in the multiple environments before delivering to the client. So that's where application environments comes into picture. Dev environment, sit environment, UAT environment, pre-prod environment, and prod environment. Like this, multiple environments will be available in the real time to run our application. So we need to install all the required softwares in the dev environment. Developers will use the dev environment for code integration testing. Similarly, we need to install all the softwares in the sit environment so that testers are going to test our application. How our project is working, all the functionalities are working as expected or not. Testers are going to test it. And similarly, application will be deployed in the UAT environment where clients will perform user acceptance testing. And once all these things are completed, then application will go to the production environment where application will be deployed for the live access. So installing all the softwares and running the code in all the machines is difficult because if you do any mistake in the software installation, if you don't install correct version of the software, then our code execution will not happen properly. Code application execution will be failed. To overcome these problems, we are going for a concept called containerization. Okay. Earlier, manually, we need to install all the required softwares to run our application. Our application will be executed in multiple environments. So we need to install required softwares in all the environments. That is time-taking process and it is risky. To avoid that problem, we are going for a concept called containerization. Docker is used for containerization. Containerization means packaging our code plus dependencies for easy execution. I want to run my application in multiple environments. To run my application, only code is not sufficient. Along with that code, we need some dependencies. So here, as part of the containerization, we are going to package the code and dependencies and we will build one image. Image contains everything to run our application. Code will be available, dependencies also will be available in the image. Once the image is created, we can run that image in any computer. That image will create a container. Inside the container, our application will be executed. Nowadays in the industry, people are running the applications by using containerization concept. People are running the applications by using containerization concept. For that, we are using Docker. Docker is a containerization software. By using Docker, we can package our code and dependencies for execution. Coming to the Docker architecture. So when you are going for a Docker, you need to understand what is the Docker file, what is the Docker image, what is the Docker registry, and what is Docker contain. Docker file contains set of instructions to download dependencies and build a Docker image. So my application is available. Developers will give the code for this application. App code will be available. To run this application code, what are the dependencies. We will specify them in the Docker file. For example, I want MySQL database, I want Tomcat server, I want Angular. Whatever the softwares that are required for our application execution, we will specify them in the Docker file. Using code and a Docker file, we are going to create a Docker image. Image nothing but a package. It contains code plus dependencies for the execution. Whatever the Docker image is created, that Docker image we can store into Docker Hub. What is a Docker Hub? Docker Hub is called as a Docker registry. Docker Hub is called as Docker registry. We can store our Docker images in the Docker Hub. Images you can store as a public image or private image. Public image means anybody can download. Private image means only you can download your image. Image nothing but a package. To create the image, file is required, Docker file. Docker file contains set of instructions to build the Docker image. Docker file contains a set of instructions to build the Docker image. Whatever the Docker image is created, we can store that Docker image into Docker Hub. Once the image is stored into the Docker Hub, we can download that image and we can run the image. When we run the image, Docker container will be created. So what is the meaning of container? Container is nothing but a box where our application will be executed. Like this, wherever you want to run your application, you just need to download Docker image and you need to run the Docker image. Then Docker container will be created. What will be there inside the container? Inside the container, our application will be available. Our application dependencies will be available inside the container. Now, I have 20 environments in the real time to run my application. No problem. You just need to download the image and you need to run the image. So if the application is executing in one computer, then definitely that application will execute in any computer because we are not installing the softwares. We are not managing the softwares. Whatever the softwares that are required to run our application, those softwares will be taken care by Docker. This complete process is called as containerization. Docker is a containerization software which is used to execute our application as a container. Docker containers you can create in any machine. So easily you can ship your application from one machine to another machine. That's why if you go to Docker, you can see the Docker logo as a ship. You can see the Docker logo as a ship. So inside the ship, there are several boxes available. What is the meaning of those boxes? So these are the Docker containers. Those are containers you can ship from one place to another place. So that's why they have given the name as Docker and they have given the logo as a ship logo. So this is the official website of the Docker. Develop faster, run anywhere. So once you have Docker container, you can run that Docker container in any machine. You can run the Docker container in any machine. So if you have the Docker, you can run the Docker container in any machine. So it is easy to run the applications by using Docker. So that is the reason you can see the logo as a ship. Inside that, boxes are available. These boxes are nothing but containers. Develop faster, run anywhere. If you are able to run your Docker application in one machine, the same application you can run in any machine without bothering about the dependencies that are required. You see here, build. That means you need to create a Docker image. Once the Docker image is created, you can share that Docker image. So you can store the Docker images in the Docker Hub. Once the Docker image is stored in the Docker Hub, you can pull the image and you can run. Whenever you run the image, it is going to create one container. Inside the container, our application will be executed. Are you guys able to understand the Docker architecture? So in the Docker architecture, mainly we need to understand Docker file, Docker image, Docker registry, Docker container. All these things we discussed in our previous lecture. That video also I have shared in our YouTube channel and I have shared in our WhatsApp group also. So if you see whatever the class we had on the Friday, that first session on the Docker, I have shared that video in our YouTube channel also, Docker session 1. Anybody who missed that session, they can go through this video I will share that video once again in our WhatsApp group. I have given WhatsApp group link in the chat box. If you are not there, you can join. So that class video and today's video also, I will share in that group. Are you guys clear with Docker architecture now? Are you guys clear with the Docker architecture now? Application code will be available. Developers will give the application code. To execute that application code, some dependencies are required. Those dependencies, we are going to specify in the Docker file. Using the Docker file, we are going to create a Docker image. The Docker image we will push to Docker Hub. Docker Hub is called as a Docker registry. From the Docker Hub, we can pull the image and we can run the image. When you run the image, container will be created. Inside the container, our application will be executed. Now, let us do Docker setup. Docker setup in Linux machines. Docker is supporting multiple platforms, guys. You can install the Docker in the Windows operating system as well as in the Linux operating system also. I'm going to set up Docker in the Linux machine. Okay, so what we need to do is log in into AWS cloud account. Login into AWS cloud account. Create Linux virtual machine. Create Linux virtual machine. Here I'm using Amazon Linux. You can use anything. And the third one, connect with the Linux VM using Mobile Extra or Putty software. You can use anything. Then install Docker software. So Docker setup. Now I want to practice Docker. I want to Dockerize my applications. I want to write the Docker file. I want to create the Docker image. I want to push image to Docker Hub. And I want to run the Docker image to create the container. In order to do all this process, we need to set up Docker in our system. You can do the Docker setup in the Windows as well as in the Linux. I'm going to set up the Docker in the Linux. How to do Docker setup in the Linux? Log in into AWS cloud account, then create Linux virtual machine using Amazon Linux AMI. Connect with that Linux machine using Mobile Extra, then install the Docker software in Linux machine. So if you don't know how to create a virtual machine in the Linux, observe. I'm going to create one virtual machine in the AWS. Observe carefully. I'm trying to log in into my AWS account. It is free tier account, guys. You can also create the account in the AWS. So once you log in into the AWS, you can search for EC2. You can search for EC2. EC2 is one service in the AWS cloud, which is used to create virtual machines. Go to EC2. You can create one Linux machine in the AWS cloud. Let me go for launch instance. I'm creating a new Linux machine. For this machine, you can give any name. I'm giving the name as Docker VM, Docker virtual machine. In that machine, I'm going to install Docker software. So Amazon Linux I'm using. AMI, Amazon Linux AMI, T2 Micro. T2 Micro is free tier eligible. So if you use any other instance, you need to pay the bill. But for T2 Micro, no need to pay the bill. It is free of cost. Then go for key pair. Already I have created one key pair. If you don't have a key pair, you can create the key pair and you can download it. Then security group, I'm not changing anything, just as it is. Click on launch instance. So I'm taking Docker VM as instance name. AMI is Amazon Linux. I'm not changing that also. T2 Micro, free tier eligible, I'm not changing. Key pair I have selected. As already I have created the key pair, I have selected. If you don't have the key pair, you can click on create new key pair. You can create the key pair and you can download. So once it is done, go down and click on launch instance. That's it. With this, one Linux machine will be created in the AWS cloud. This is called as virtual machine. One Linux machine is creating in the AWS cloud, successfully initiated our instance. This is our instance ID, success. Click on this ID. You can see the machine we have created. That machine is in the pending state now. It will change to running state. Once the machine is changed to running state, now we can connect to that machine from our Windows machine. Okay, the machine is in the running state now. Where is this machine is running? In the AWS cloud. This is a Linux machine. Once you select this machine checkbox here, you can see a public IP address, which is used to connect with the machine. Now, machine is running in the AWS cloud. This is a Linux machine. Now I want to connect with this Linux machine. For that, I will use Mobile Extram software. You can use Mobile Extram or Putty. Anything is fine. Go to Mobile Extram, session, SSH, remote host. Remote host is nothing but public IP address of this machine. Take the remote host, public IP, username. The default username is EC2 user. Go for setting, private key, key file, PEM file. The PEM file is downloaded in the previous session, aws.pem file. I have selected, click on OK. So if you see, I'm using Mobile Extram. What is the purpose of that Mobile Extram? I am using my Windows laptop. This is my Windows laptop. My machine is created in the AWS cloud. So this is our Linux VM. This Linux virtual machine is created in the AWS cloud. Okay. So for this machine, public IP is available. This is public IP of this machine, which is used to connect with that machine. This is public IP, which is used to connect with that machine. My laptop is in which I'm taking the class. This is Windows machine. Okay. From this Windows machine, I want to connect with this Linux machine. This Linux machine is available in AWS cloud. So to connect from Windows to Linux, we are using one software as a mediator that is called Mobile Extram. Some people will use Mobile Extram. Some people will use Putty. Anything is fine. Some people will use GitHub also, Git client also. So like this, either by using Mobile Extram or Putty, we can connect from Windows machine to Linux machine. Same thing I'm doing. So observe how I will do that. Session, SSH, public IP address of the machine, username, default username is EC2-user, setting, use a private key, that is PEM file, which we have downloaded. Click on OK. So with this, I'm trying to connect with the Linux machine. So in that Linux machine, currently nothing is available. Docker is also not available. Now we need to install Docker in this machine. Before going to do that, let us verify Docker version. No, Docker command not found. Docker software is not available in this machine. Now I want to install Docker software in this machine. Are you guys able to understand my point? Guys, are you able to understand my point? Are you guys able to understand my point, what we are trying to learn? Come on. So as of now, we connected with our Linux machine. In this machine, Docker software is available or Docker software is not available. Docker software is not available. So to install the Docker, I have prepared some commands here. Using these commands, you can install the Docker in the Amazon Linux. Okay. First command, sudo yum update y. It is used to update the Linux packages. Nothing to do. This is a new machine. Just now we launched. So no packages are updated. This is the command which is used to install Docker. Sudo yum install docker-y. It is going to download and install Docker software in the Linux machine. Okay. It is downloading the Docker software in our system. Complete. Docker is installed successfully. Then start the Docker service. Sudo service docker start. Redirecting to start the Docker service. Once the Docker is started, in order to access the Docker, we need to add our EC2 user to the Docker group. Add EC2 user to Docker group executing below command. So here I am using this machine as a EC2 user. We logged in into this machine as a EC2 user. That EC2 user I'm adding to Docker group. So once we added EC2 user to the Docker group, you just restart the session. Exit, press R. Now the session is restarted. Once the session is restarted, then you can go for Docker info. When you execute the Docker info, we are able to get the Docker information. So server version, no images are available, no containers are available currently. Containers are not running, images also not available. Our Docker is available. Check the version of the Docker. Docker version. Just we can check Docker version. Docker is installed or not. Yes, you can see Docker version. Docker-V. Docker-V. So Docker version 20.10.25 build number. So when I execute Docker-V, it is showing me Docker version. That means in my computer, Docker software is installed successfully. In my computer, Docker software is installed successfully. These are the commands if you execute. When I say $, that means it is a command. When I say hash, that means it is a comment. So I will give this document for you. You can install the Docker software in the Linux machine just by executing these commands. Just look at the commands. Just I'm copying this command. I will go to mobile extra. I will right click. So in the Windows, you will copy this command. In the Linux, if you right click, that command will be pasted. Got it? So like this, we can copy paste the command from the notes and we can install the Docker software. So once that is installed, verify Docker installation. So to do the Docker installation verification, Docker-V. So when you execute Docker-V, you will get the Docker which is installed. Okay. So now once you execute these commands, then you execute exit command, then you press R to restart the session. Then you can verify Docker-V. Docker is available in our system. All right. Docker is available. This command is used to update the existing packages in the Linux. This is used to install the Docker. -y represents global. From any directory, I should be able to access my Docker. Sudo service Docker start. It will install the Docker. It will start the Docker service. To use the Docker software as a EC2 user, we need to create that EC2 user to the Docker group. We need to add the EC2 user to the Docker group. Add EC2 user to Docker group by executing below command, because I connected to this machine as a EC2 user. As a EC2 user, I need to work with the Docker. That's why EC2 user should be added to Docker group. Once the user is added to the Docker group, we need to restart the session. For that, we are using exit command. Then we will press R. Session will be restarted. Then you can verify Docker version by using Docker-V. Are you guys clear with these commands? Docker setup in Linux. Login into AWS cloud account. Create Linux virtual machine using Amazon Linux AMI. So we are using T2 Micro, which is free tier eligible. Connect with the Linux by using mobile extra or putty. Install the Docker software in the Linux VM by executing below commands. Are you clear with the installation process? Are you guys clear with installation process? Come on, guys. All good. Perfect. Next one. Once the installation process is completed, now we need to understand Docker commands, how to work with Docker. So if you see, currently I'm in the EC2 user account. I connected to my Linux machine. Let me execute a command called Docker images. When I execute the command called Docker images, it will show me what are the images are available in our system. What are the Docker images available in our system? Do we have any Docker images in our system? Guys, do we have any Docker images in our system? No, nothing is available. Okay. Docker images command will display the Docker images we have in our system. Then we can go for Docker PS. Docker PS command will display what are the Docker containers running in our system. What are the images available? What are the containers are running in our system? Docker images command. We need to learn about these commands, guys. Docker images and Docker PS. Okay. What is the purpose of Docker images? To display Docker images available in our machine. To display running Docker containers. To display running Docker containers, we will use Docker PS command. Guys, you no need to write a dollar when you are executing the command. Dollar will come already here. You just need to type Docker images to see what are the images available. Currently in our machine, Docker images are not available. Docker PS, currently in our machine, Docker images are not running. Okay, now I want to download the Docker image. So to download the Docker image, there is a command called Docker pull hello world. Hello world is a default Docker image that is available in Docker Hub. Hello world is a image that is available in the Docker Hub. Just to test Docker software is working in our system or not, we can try with the hello world. Currently, we don't know how to write the Docker file to run our application. That's why I'm going with some existing Docker image. So how to download a Docker image? To download the Docker image, we will go for Docker pull command. Docker pull image name. What is the image name? Hello world. Where is that Docker image? That is a public Docker image. Anybody can pull this image. It is available in the Docker Hub. Docker Hub nothing but Docker registry. Okay. Let me execute Docker pull hello world. Now you can see it is downloading the Docker image called hello world. After downloading this image, let us execute a command Docker images. Earlier, when I executed Docker images, I did not get any output because no images available in our system. Then after, I have executed Docker pull command. When I executed Docker pull command with the image name, it is downloading the latest image. From where it downloaded the latest image? From the Docker library. That is called Docker Hub. So this is the name of the image. This is the tag of the image. This is image ID. When this image is created, what is the size of the image? We can see all the information related to that image. By executing Docker images command, it will display the Docker images available in our machine. It is displaying the Docker images available in our machine. Now, I want to run the image. Okay. So here, if you observe, Docker file is used to create the Docker image. Now I am not going to create anything because I have downloaded the image which is already available. So the image is already available in the Docker Hub. That image is a hello world. That is a default image. So image is pulled. Now here I pulled that image. Now I need to run the image. When I run the image, container will be created. How to run the Docker image? Docker run image name. What is image name? Hello world. Docker pull is used to download the image. Docker run is used to run the image. When you run the image, Docker container will be created. Docker run hello world. Wow. We are getting a message hello from Docker. That means Docker software installed successfully in our system. Docker is working as expected in our system. We are executing Docker run hello world. What it has done? It is printing some message. Hello from Docker. This message shows that your installation appears to be working correctly. That means your Docker software working correctly. In your system, Docker software is working correctly. When you execute Docker run image name, it is going to run the image. When the image you execute run command for the image, that image will be creating a container. What is a container? Our application will execute in the container. Hello world is a default application which will print a hello message on the terminal. Can you guys read these steps now? There are 4 steps available. Can you guys read those steps? What it is telling? Guys, can you read this? Can you read this? Hello from Docker. When I execute a Docker run hello world, it is saying that a hello from Docker. This message shows that your installation appears to be working correctly. To generate this message, Docker took following steps. Docker client contacted Docker daemon. Docker daemon pulled a hello world image from the Docker hub. Docker daemon created a container from the image which is running and executing the application to produce the output. Docker daemon streamed that output to the Docker client, which is sent to your terminal. That means whenever we install the Docker, Docker client will be installed in our system. When we execute any Docker command, Docker client will communicate with the Docker daemon. Docker daemon will perform the operation. Docker daemon nothing but a background process. Docker daemon we are not installing. Docker daemon is a process which will be coming along with the Docker client. So we installed Docker software. So when we execute Docker command, Docker client will contact the Docker daemon. Docker daemon is a background process which will perform the operations like downloading the image, running the containers will be taken care by Docker daemon. Okay. Now, hello world image we are able to pull. From where we got the hello world image? Who is maintaining the hello world image? It is available in the Docker library. Docker people maintaining the hello world image in the Docker hub. Are you getting my point? Sriram, Docker image we pulled by using Docker pull command. So it is downloaded from the Docker library to our system. So where that Docker image available in our system, if you execute Docker images, it will display what are the images available in our system. So hello world image is available in our system. When you run that image, Docker run hello world, that image will run, it will create a container, that container will give the output. Okay, so here Docker images command to display all the Docker images available in our machine. Docker PS to display running Docker containers in our machine. Okay, if you want to download the image, to download a Docker image, we will use Docker pull image name, whatever the image you want to pull. If you know the name of the image, you can pull that. Run Docker image. Run Docker image to create Docker container. To run the Docker image, we are using a command called Docker run image name, right? Whenever we run the Docker image, it will run the image and it is going to create the Docker container. Okay. Now, so I have created a container. Let me check it. Docker PS, is it displaying? No. Let me give Docker PS-A. Yes. So Docker PS command will display only running containers. But whatever the containers I have created, those containers are executed and they exited. They stop. So this container will just print a hello message and it will stop the container. So to see all the stopped containers, you can go for PS-A. If you use just Docker PS, it will display only running containers. Now, to display stopped containers also. To display stopped containers also, we can go for Docker PS-A. If you use Docker PS, it will display running containers. But hello world containers created, they have provided the message and they exited. One container exited 5 minutes ago. Another container exited 1 minute ago. Let me run this image once again. Third container I'm creating. Docker run hello world. Docker run hello world. I got the message. Third container created and stopped. How to verify? Let's go for Docker PS-A. Now you can see 3 containers are stopped. Just 7 seconds ago, one more container got created and stopped. For every container, container ID will be available. This is a container created based on which image, when it is created, what is the current status of the image. Are you guys able to understand the commands here? We have done Docker installation in the Linux, and we are trying to play with the Docker. So I want to see all the images available in the machine. For that, I'm executing Docker images command. What is the purpose of Docker images? To display Docker images available in our machine. What is the purpose of Docker PS? To display running Docker containers in our machine. What is the purpose of PS-A? It is used to display stopped containers. Then what is the purpose of pull? Docker pull. Docker pull is used to download the Docker image. What is the purpose of Docker run? Docker run is used to run the image. When you run the image, container will be created. To run the Docker image, we are going for Docker. To run the Docker image, we are using Docker run command. When you run the Docker image, Docker container will be created. For every run, it will create new container. Exit means container got stopped. Container started, it provided the output and it stopped that container because we executed hello world image. Hello world image is a basic image. Okay. Now let me go to my Docker Hub account, hub.docker.io. In my Docker Hub, I have stored several Docker images. In my Docker Hub account, let me log in into my Docker Hub account. Let me log in into my Docker Hub account. You can see that there is a Docker image available, Ashok IT / spring-boot-rest-API. This is a Docker image. What is this image type? It's a public image. Can we download this image, guys? Already 66,000 people downloaded my Docker image. So do you know how to download this Docker image to our system? Do you know how to download this Docker image into our system? What is the command to download the image? Docker pull command. What is the command, guys? Docker pull image name. So this is my Docker image name, Ashok IT / spring-boot-rest-API. So, okay, I want to see what all the images available in my system. Docker images. How many images available in our system now? How many Docker images available in our system? Only one Docker image is available with a name called hello world. With a name called hello world. I want to download one Docker image from the Docker Hub. Docker pull image name Ashok IT / spring-boot-rest-API. Yes, this is the name of my Docker image. This is the command, Docker pull image name. This is the name of my image. Enter. Now what happened? It is downloading my Docker image from the Docker Hub. Pulling the Docker image from the Docker Hub. Now it downloaded the Docker image from the Docker Hub. So how to see that? Again execute Docker images command. Now can you see? Can we see the Docker image which is downloaded? This is my image name. Tag is latest. This is image ID. For every image, one unique ID will be available. When that image is created, what is the size of the image? Ashok IT Spring Boot REST API is one Docker image. So Spring Boot REST API nothing but it is one Java application. It is one Java application. Now, can I run my Docker image? Can I run my Docker image? That is a Java application. Can I run my Docker image? If I run the Docker image, what will happen, guys? If I run this Docker image, what will happen? Docker container will be created. If I run the Docker image, Docker container will be created. Do you know how to run the Docker image? What command we need to use to run the Docker image, guys? Do you know what command we need to use to run the Docker image? Come on, fast. Docker pull or Docker run? Docker run image name. Let me go with Docker run. Docker run. For the Docker run, you can give either image name or you can give image ID also. Every image will have a unique ID. Anything is fine. Now I am giving Docker run Ashok IT / Spring Boot REST API. So this is my image name, which contains my Java application and required dependencies. Execute. When I run the Docker image, you observe what is happening. Can you see my Spring Boot application is executing? Can you see that my Spring Boot application is executing? Come on, guys. Is my Spring Boot application executing or not? What is the meaning of that? When a Docker container created, inside that container, my Java application is executing. Am I installing the Java software to run this Java application? Am I installing the Java software to run this Java application? No. Who is taking care of the Java installation to run this application? Who is installing the Java software? Docker is installing the Java software, because to run the Java application, Java software is a dependency. To run this Java application, Java is a dependency. So Java is installed and the application started. Tomcat started on the port number 9090. My application running on the port number 9090. Are you guys able to follow this? Are you guys able to follow this? My application started with the port number 9090. With 9090. But if you observe, once I have executed the Docker run command with the image name, as it is a web application, the container is stopped or the container is not stopped. Guys, here the container stopped or the container is keep on running. Container is keep on running. Can I execute any other command in the terminal? No. Can I execute any other command in the terminal? No, because my container started. My container started, the container logs are printing. I cannot execute any other command in the terminal. If I want to execute any other command, I should go to a duplicate tab. I should go to duplicate tab. If you click here, right click here, you will get the duplicate tab. I opened a duplicated tab here. Now you can execute Docker PS. So what is the purpose of Docker PS? What is the purpose of Docker PS? Yes, it is saying that boss, one container is in the running status. One of your container is running up from 2 minutes. Earlier for Hello World, the status was exited. But now my Spring Boot application is running in the Docker container. The container created 2 minutes ago. From 2 minutes, it is up and running. This is the container ID. This is the Docker image I used to create the container. From 2 minutes, that container is up and running. Docker PS. If you go for just PS, it will display only running containers. If you go for PS-A, it is displaying running containers as well as stopped containers also. 3 containers I created by using Hello World. They are exited, nothing but they stopped. But this container, which is created by using my Spring Boot application, this is up and running from last 3 minutes. This is up and running from last 3 minutes. Are you guys able to understand how to create a Docker container? Are you guys able to understand how to create Docker container? Yes. By using which command? Docker run. Docker pull, Docker run. Docker images. It is used to display all the Docker images available in our machine. Docker PS. It is used to display running Docker containers in our machine. Docker PS-A. It is used to display stopped Docker containers. It is used to display stopped and running containers. PS will display only running containers. PS-A displays stopped and running containers. To download the Docker image, Docker pull image name. To run the Docker image, Docker run image name. Are you clear? Perfect. Now, let me stop my container, guys. So container is already running, right? I'm not able to execute any command. If you press Control C, that Docker container got stopped. The Docker container got stopped. I pressed Control C. Now I got the terminal to execute another command. Okay, observe carefully. Here I am seeing Docker images. There are two images available. Docker PS, no container running, because I have exited from the container by using Control C. Now if I want to run it again, Docker run Ashok IT slash Spring Boot REST API. So when I execute this command, the Docker container is creating, but there is a problem. When the container is created, container logs are coming. I am not able to execute the next command. My terminal is not open for me to execute the command. My terminal is not open for me to execute the command. So if I want to execute any other command, I need to go for duplicate tab. Instead of this, what we can do is we can run the containers in the detached mode. What is the meaning of detached mode? Docker run -d space image name. So what is -d here? -d will represent run your Docker container in the detached mode. Detached mode means container will be created, terminal will be open to execute the command. Earlier, I have not used -d. The Docker container logs printed. I'm not able to execute my next command. But now I am able to create the container in the detached mode. That means my terminal is open to execute the next command. If you use -d, you will get the option to execute the other commands in the same terminal. If you don't use -d, container will be created, logs will be printing, you can't execute the another command. Are you able to understand? Are you able to understand what is -d here? Are you able to understand what is -d here? What is -d here? What is the purpose of -d? What is the purpose of -d in the Docker run command? Detached mode. What is the meaning of detached mode? What is the meaning of detached mode? Run the Docker container. Run Docker container in detached mode. What is the meaning of detached mode? Docker run -d image name or image ID. Anything you can give. Detached mode means when we run the container in the detached mode, our terminal will open to execute next commands. When you directly run this, your terminal will not be available to run the another command. Got it? Docker run -d image name. -d I am giving for running the container in the detached mode. Got it? Detached mode will help us to run other commands in same tab. Detached mode will help us to run the other commands in the same tab. Now, my container is running. I can see the container ID. How to check the container logs, right? Docker logs space container ID. That means how that container is running, what are the logs of the container, how the application is executing, on which port number our application is executing. Okay, you can see the log messages of the application. So the logs are generated, application is running in the container. So logs also will be available in the container. So to check the container logs, we can use Docker logs container ID. How to get the container ID? If you go for Docker PS, it will show you the containers which are in the running status. From 3 minutes it is running. This is the container ID. So let us execute a command Docker logs container ID. In the interview, they will ask this question: how to troubleshoot our Docker logs and how to check the container logs. To check the container logs, we are going for Docker logs container ID by using container ID. So display Docker container logs. That means log messages. How our application is executing inside the container. Is there any problem in the application execution? We can find out by using logs of the container. How to get the container logs? By using Docker logs command. By using Docker logs command. Are you guys clear with this? How to check the container logs? Docker logs container ID. Perfect. Docker PS. I can see my container. Okay. Let me go for Docker stop container ID. Docker stop container ID. Then what happened? Now go for Docker PS-A. My container stopped. My container stopped. Just 5 seconds ago, I have stopped my container. How I am stopping my container? Docker stop container ID. My container got stopped. Stop the Docker container. Stop Docker container. To stop the Docker container, Docker stop, I'm going to give container ID. Okay. Now I want to start the container again. So same thing you can do, Docker start. Whatever the container you stop, you can start the container again. Docker container started. Now go for Docker PS. The container is up from 5 seconds. So here I'm using Docker stop container ID, Docker start container ID. Docker stop to stop the container. Start Docker container. To start the Docker container again, same command, Docker start container ID. Okay. Whatever the container is running, to create the container, we will go for run command. If you want to stop the running container, stop command. If you want to start the stopped container, Docker start. If you want to recreate the new container, run command. Whenever you execute run command, always a new container will be created. Whenever you go for Docker run command, always a new container will be created. When you want to see the logs of the container, Docker logs command. If you want to stop Docker container, stop running Docker container. Start Docker container, which is stopped. Observe carefully. I want to run the image by using Docker run command. We can run the Docker image in the detached mode. What is the meaning of detached mode? Detached mode will help us to run other commands in the same tab. When the container is running, I want to check the logs of the container. Docker logs container ID, it will display the container logs. I want to stop the Docker container. Docker stop container ID. I want to start the container which is stopped. Docker start container ID. I want to delete the Docker container. Delete Docker container. I want to remove it. To remove the Docker container, Docker RM container ID. Whatever the container I want to delete, I can go for Docker RM container ID. Delete Docker container. Okay. Container is available with the ID. Docker PS. All right. Docker PS -A. So there are so many containers are available. I want to delete this particular Docker container. To delete the container ID, Docker RM container ID. Okay. So that container will be deleted. Now execute PS-A. That there are earlier 3 containers available for Spring Boot application. 2 containers are in the stopped state, 1 container in the running state. Now 1 container in the running state, 1 container in the stopped state. That means the remaining container got deleted. How I deleted the container? To delete the container, I am using Docker RM command. Docker remove container ID. This is the command. What is the purpose of Docker RM container ID? It is used to delete Docker container which is in stopped state. Okay. If I want to delete the Docker container which is in the stopped state, then I can go for a Docker RM. For example, if you see there is a container in the running status, Docker PS. This container is up from 3 minutes. Can I try deleting this Docker container? Docker RM container ID. Now, so am I able to delete this container, guys? Am I able to delete the container? Can you read this message? When we can go for a Docker RM container ID, delete the Docker container which is in the stopped state. But currently, this container is in the running state. Am I able to delete it? No. What they are telling? You cannot remove a running container, sir. Stop the container before attempting removal, or you go for force remove. So best thing, you stop the container first by using Docker stop, then you delete the container by using RM. If you want to delete the running Docker container, you need to go for Docker RM -F. -F represents force delete. Now enter. Now it is deleted. Okay. Now you go for Docker PS. There is no running container. Earlier this container was running. Now I have deleted that container which is in the running state by using force. Docker RM -F container ID, it is used to delete the running Docker container. If you want to delete stopped container, just RM is sufficient. Okay. So delete running Docker container. Delete running Docker container. How to delete the running Docker container? RM-F container ID. Okay. Read these commands. Docker images to display the Docker images which we have. Docker PS to display running Docker containers. PS-A to display all stopped and running containers. How to download the Docker image using Docker pull command. How to run the Docker image using Docker run command. How to run the image in the detached mode. Docker run-D. What is detached mode? Detached mode will help us to run the other commands in the same tab. Display Docker container logs. Docker logs container ID. Docker stop. Stop the running Docker container. Docker start. Start the container which is in the stopped state. How to delete stopped Docker container. Docker RM command. How to delete running Docker container. Docker RM-F. -F represents force. Okay. How to delete Docker images. Okay. Docker images. So there are several images available, right? There are 2 images available. I want to delete images from my system. To delete the Docker images, we will go for a command called Docker RMI. RM means to remove the container. RMI means to remove the image. You can remove the image by using image name or by using image ID. I'm giving the image name. Okay. Docker RMI image name. Error response referenced by a container using this referenced image. Whatever the image I'm trying to delete, I'm not able to delete the reason because this image is referencing by a container which is stopped. My image is referenced by a container in our system. So then what I need to do? Docker RMI-F force. Now I have deleted. If your image is using by some container, you cannot delete. Then you need to go for force delete. Docker RMI. What is the purpose of Docker RMI? To remove our Docker image. Remove Docker image. Okay. Docker RMI. You can go for image name or you can go for image ID. If the image is referencing by some container, then forcefully you need to delete. For that, we will go for Docker RMI-F. Are you clear? Once you deleted that image, then go for Docker images. Only one image available. Earlier, when I execute Docker images, you can see that there are 2 images available. After that, I have executed a Docker RMI image name. That image is having a reference. That's why I'm not able to delete. So to delete that image forcibly, I'm using Docker RMI-F image name. That image untagged, then that image got deleted. So once it is deleted, if I see Docker images, it is showing only one image. It is showing only one image. Now you see Docker images. One image is available. Docker ps-a. There are 4 containers available, which are in the stopped status. One image is available, 4 containers available, which are in the stopped state. I want to clean up everything. I want to delete all the stopped containers, unused images. I want to make everything clean. Then Docker system prune-a. Docker system prune-a. I want to prune the complete Docker system. That means I want to delete all the stopped containers. I want to delete all unused images. I want to make everything clean. For that, we are using a command called Docker system prune-a. Execute. It is asking. Warning. This will remove all stopped containers, all networks not used by at least one container, all images without at least one container associated to them, all build cache. So everything will be deleted when you execute this command. Docker system prune-a. Are you sure you want to continue? Yes, man. Done. So containers are deleted. Images also deleted. 13 KB space I have reclaimed. So if you want to clean up everything, then you can go for Docker system prune-a. Right. Prune, remove all stopped containers plus unused Docker images. Then what is the command? Docker system prune-a. Using this command, you can remove all the stopped containers plus unused images in our Docker system. Docker system prune-a. Are you guys clear with my point? These Docker commands are very important. In order to work with Docker, these commands are very important. How to work with Docker images, how to work with Docker containers, how to pull the image, how to run the image, how to check the logs of the container, how to stop the container, how to start the container, okay? How to remove the image, how to remove the container, how to remove forcefully, how to clean up everything which is not used images, not running containers, I want to delete. For that, we can go for Docker system prune-a. Are you guys able to understand? Are you guys able to understand what we are trying to learn now? Perfect. In the tomorrow session, we are going to understand how to write Docker files, how to store the Docker images to the Docker Hub, okay? How to run the containers, all that stuff we are going to learn today. So very basic thing that we understood, how to install Docker software in our Linux machine and how to work with Docker images and Docker containers. Now, the most important thing in the Docker, that is Docker file creation. Once we create the Docker file, using that Docker file, we can build a Docker image. That Docker image we can store into Docker Hub. From the Docker Hub, we can pull the image and we can run the image, then Docker container will be created. So I want all of you to practice this Linux machine setup and install the Docker, okay? And practice these Docker commands before coming to tomorrow session. Let me upload these notes in our website, guys, so that you people can practice it. Okay. Let me upload these notes for the Docker people. Docker notes. So whatever the notes I'm preparing, I'm uploading these notes in our website. So the people who completed the enrollment process, they will get the access for the notes for the practice. Yes. For the DevOps people, also I'm going to upload this. Yeah, done. Notes is uploaded. So you guys can download that notes and you can do the practice.